Okay, this is a recorded interview. Today's Monday, January the 25th. It's for Organic News on Awake Radio. And it's with, I think this might be my third interview with you, Dr. Seth Farber, who wrote the book, The Spiritual Gift of Madness. And I'm still trying to figure out what that spiritual gift is, Dr. Farber, because if you're mad and having a spiritual awakening in this place, you know, they're going to haul you off to Bellevue, or they're going to haul you off to jail. Yeah. So thank you for being back on. And you're going to introduce the other guest that's with us.
I guess I won't say anything about the spiritual gift then, right? You made a comment.
Well, sure, you can respond to my comment.
Yeah. Actually, I was going to do a follow-up to the book, but there's been so much happening in the world that because when I wrote the book, there was the beginning of the Mad Pride movement, which I was very enthusiastic about, and it hasn't been as successful as I would like it to have been, and it's taken another direction, and a lot of it is decentralized now. But the tone was originally set by the founders, Sasha Dubrow and Jack McNamara, which really had a Mad Pride kind of orientation, and he no longer has that orientation. So, but I didn't write the book because I was very concerned about the kind of trajectory that the United States that the world was on, with the global warming and the failure of the refusal of the elites to do anything about it except, make ceremonial gestures at some of the, even some of the environmental organizations took serious. Anyway, so I thought we were on a kind of trajectory toward doom, and I didn't see what influence I could have on the Mad Pride movement at that time. But so when I wrote it, the idea was that the gift was the various spiritual potential that madness possessed, and that the vision that many people labeled mad possessed of another world different from the one we're living in.
Yep.
So, but yeah,
man's system and nature are in complete conflict. This system puts, everybody, to some people more than others, in direct conflict with their own inner nature, and some people just feel it a lot more than other people, and just because they're expressing it, that makes them sane, not insane. I mean, it's common knowledge that the world that we're living in, this system is completely, utterly mad. It's the system that's mad.
Yeah, what you said was similar to what John Perry, who was a Jungian psychiatrist, said. He had an alternative treatment center for people who were so-called schizophrenic. And in one of his last writings, he pointed out that in the imagery of the so-called hallucinations of schizophrenia, there used to be expression of kind of apocalyptic ending with the atom bomb, and now much more often there was a kind of expression, imagery of the earth being destroyed by environmental destruction. So it was in there. They seem to be kind of it's famous, the canary and they were labeled schizophrenic, were canaries in the coal mine, and that their so-called schizophrenic imagery depicted the world being as it was threatened by ecological doom or destruction.
I mean, for decades, like I always thought it was a no-brainer. Like, I mean, I've always been trying to move in the direction of getting people, to listen to your body, trust what the body feels and knows, listen and trust the wisdom that's, the intelligence that's in the body. I mean, what is smarter than nature? What is smarter than the body?
Yeah.
But in the society that we live in, it's the opposite of that. It's make nature and health the criminal. If you have a normal reaction to an unhealthy or a stressful situation, this system criminalizes you.
Yeah, well, the elites have their agenda, which obviously following. We saw some of it revealed by Snowden, which is their agenda or vision seems to be. They seem to be oblivious to the destruction of man's habitat and nature.
Exactly.
They don't seem to be making that we can see any plans to actually stop it, but they aren't making plans for complete control over all individuals in the country. Not only is there what Snowden, not only is there surveillance, but I've talked about and talk about again the increasing number of individuals whose brains are now under subjected to a variety of forms of electronic intrusion and harassment. So that seems to be one can only extrapolate that their goal is one of a kind of Michel Foucault used the term panopticon, which is a kind of geometric structure that they used to have in some prisons, in which the prison wardens and the guards could sit and could see every part of the prison, but they themselves were invisible. There's a universal panopticon that's developing to allow the elite to see not only the behavior, as Snowden points out, not only the behavior and statements of the individual, but actually they now have the technology to see into their brain and to harass it. And so I'm speaking on behalf of the 300,000 and maybe more people who are victims of targeted individuals who are victims of electronic harassment and torture.
I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Robert Duncan.
Yeah.
But I actually did a show, like a year or so ago, 2 shows with Dr. Robert Duncan on targeted individuals, and there was a guest who was a targeted individual, and then I had Dr. Robert Duncan on an interview with William Binney, because Dr. Robert Duncan was a huge fan of William Binney. And so I was able to kind of, pair the 2 of them up and do a show, and it went really well.
Yeah, he's someone I wanted to contact also with today. I'm going to write an article on that because William Binney and Duncan I corresponded with, and he developed the technology that allows. He was working on it. He didn't know it was going to be used as a weapon against the American population, or portions of the American population. And as I said, if we extrapolate from it, we have to imagine that they're going to be using it, that these individuals are the guinea pigs in a process that they attempt to extend.
For people that don't know who William Binney is, he was kind of the NSA whistleblower before Edward Snowden. He just didn't have the documents.
Yeah. Anyway, Robert Duncan can confirm. Also, there's a book. Where's that book? Written on it by That's the problem with the book, the politics of the book, but at the end, but it does talk about the technology very well by John Hall called Finity. I guess I should talk about Linda. She's one of those people who fell into the system.
Yeah, introduce the next guest.
Oh yes, Joe is.
And he just wants to be known as Joe.
Yeah, an activist in the psychiatric survivors movement, and he's worked with me on a number of cases. I first met him in 1988. I guess there was a case where he and I were visiting a friend of mine who was incarcerated in the mental hospital, psychiatric hospital, as they call it, in White Plains, on New York, connected with New York Hospital. So he also has been visiting Linda. She had a lot of friends and she lost touch with them. And none of them, I don't think she's seen any of them in a long time. And back in about 2010, we had an emotional, I was out of touch with her too. I hadn't been a close friend of hers, but I knew her. I was a casual friend of hers and saw her every few months or so. She was always, she became a leader in the movement against the electroshock. And now the use of not only electroshock, but in the last, I guess, 15 years, they've used electroshock involuntarily, as they did in the 60s. They stopped that for a while after one flew over the cuckoo's nest because there was an outcry against it. But if you don't behave yourself, you can end up being electroshocked at, for example, at the place where Linda is, the New York State Psychiatric Facility in Ward's Island.
And her name is Linda Andre,
Yeah,
and she wrote a book called Doctors of Deception. So
that's why they call Doctors of Deception what they don't want you to know about shock treatment.
Let Joe kind of be able to, because he's the one that knows what's going on, or I guess both of you do. But let Joe speak.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I'm Joe, and thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, just speak out, Joe. Okay.
Yes. Hi. I'm Joe. Thank you for having me on your show.
Sure.
I want to talk a little bit about Linda. I knew her back somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s. We went on some demonstrations about electroshock, and I've been in touch not too often because she's a free woman and she has her own life. So she's a very busy person. She's writing books and very busy. And I just heard that she's been in the hospital again. And I went to go see her last week with Dr. Farber, and we actually went to testify on her behalf. And the place is not a very nice place. It's one of the worst places I've seen. And she's not very happy there. There's nothing positive about it. She's in a situation where she's outnumbered, and she's isolated. She lost a lot of things. She lost an animal. She's not in contact with her son anymore. They had some falling out. In fact, he probably took advantage of her mental illness and abused her.
Wait a minute, you can't, we don't know, I don't know if you should say things like that. Yeah, we don't know the actual.
Well, something did happen where, there was some things taking place, and he robbed her own house and things like that. And we don't really know why, but maybe that's not the whole thing. It's all about her stated condition, her mental illness. And I had no idea that she was in the hospital for 8 months already.
What is her condition? What does she have?
Well, they claim
Or
it's
or she just knows too much and is protesting.
yeah. Well, that's what I think. It's basically that she's very smart. She's written some books and she knows some things. And I think what they do is they put a mental illness on that, and they stop her from letting people know and demonstrating and stuff. And it's like she talks too much, and they don't want that to happen.
They can't just put anybody in the hospital and say they're mentally ill, can they?
No,
no, but basically, I think it's like she's already been through a lot, which means that she's done everything, written books, and I think after writing the book is that she should have gone out and tried to sell the book. She should have promoted it more. But in my opinion, it's like she might think that there's nothing else to do, and she might have gotten lost at that moment. But that doesn't mean because someone gets lost that you put them in a psychiatric hospital.
It's not designed to help you there either, of course, right? I mean, they just keep you all drugged up.
No, right. They give her drugs, pills, and then they actually give her a shot every once in a while. They don't check on her. They don't ask what her needs are. They don't ask if she's comfortable, if they could get anything. Like just for today, I tried to reach her today. This is after we went to speak on her behalf on Thursday. I couldn't get through since 11 o'clock today. It's after 6 o'clock tonight, and I just got through for 4 minutes. The nurses were putting me through the phone and sending me over to the records department. And records say, we can't put you through the phone and speak to the nurse because that has to be done by the operator. And they did this all day. And this is illegal. And this is she has rights,
Right.
And I think they're taking that away from her today because they know that she had people come and testify for her, and they don't really like that condition.
Cat.
Yeah.
I know what's happening to women. You said I don't know what's happening. I really resent that.
No, I didn't say. I just didn't know who knew what more,
Yes, I testified as an expert witness twice. I wouldn't have testified without knowing what was happening. I wasn't there for the past 5 years, but I acquainted myself with what they said, and I interviewed her twice for 2 hours each time.
And what were you? So you were testifying on her behalf to help her to get released?
Yes, to help her get released. I testified as an expert psychologist, as an expert witness to get her released. And
how did that go?
They have their well, there were 2 hearings, and the first one, it resulted in her being forced to take psychiatric drugs, which she had started to take, but she wanted to stop. And so she's been forced to take 3 different so-called antipsychotics, neuroleptics, Haldol, forget the like Joe may know the name of the other one, Haldol, lithium, Zyprexa, and there's a relatively new one. I don't know if Joe knows the name of it. I can't think of it right now.
Yeah, that's shots of Invega.
Invega, that's it.
Invega.
Yeah, that's a new. Well, not that new, probably 6 or 7 years or something. Neuroleptic. That's the second wave of antipsychotics. The propaganda is that they're not as harmful, but they are as harmful. And I mean, later I could say why the propaganda has. Some people find the propaganda persuasive, but they're already, Linda's shown signs of reacting to the drugs by shaking. And that's a common reaction, but she shakes. She showed me how her hand shakes. So their narrative is that 5 years ago, she was stricken by, I guess, schizoaffective disorder. And according to the doctor, there's only one treatment for that. That's what he says. There's only one treatment. And I was able to kind of construct an alternative narrative as to what happened to her 10 years ago. She finished her book, and the book was published by University of Rutgers Press, and it was reviewed in a number of places. It got excellent reviews. I'm trying to think. David Cohen reviewed it in the Journal of Mind and Behavior. David Cohen is a professor of social work at the university in Florida. For some reason, a variety of different things happened to Linda, and it resulted in what I would call a crisis or a breakdown of sorts. Breakdown in that the usual left brain processing, the schemata for processing quote unquote reality were suspended in a way, and her understanding of life became more chaotic, and there were a number of assaults that resulted in her feeling tremendously deprived. There were a number of assaults that really constituted losses. You know, one could call it, say, in a midlife crisis, there was the kind of perceived, at least, loss of youth. She finished what was really her magnus opus, because she had been written articles about electroshock and gone to the shock doctors' conferences and argued with them for something like 10 years. So this was a climax of her career as an activist.
She's not is she a doctor too, or?
No.
Okay.
No, but she was a writer, and when she had electroshock 25 years ago, you know, obviously they made the decision 25 years ago to give her electroshock. For 25 years, she was a leading activist in the anti-electroshock movement, and in general in the anti-psychiatry or psychiatric survivors movement.
Yeah, they want to get rid of those people.
Especially
if you're protesting against medications and using medication for, to deal with, mental health issues instead of actual, behavioral things that can really help people.
Right. Well, she didn't talk about medications too much.
Oh.
She's against it, but she focused on electroshock. And the thing is, what I said, I testified, was that she had a number of losses. Joe referred to the loss of her relationship with her son. We don't know all the details of the conflict that took place, but Linda felt it was a cherished relationship. She was a single mother, and that relationship no longer exists. And that, to most people I've met a lot of women who lost relationship with their son and daughter because they're seized. In this case, the son was grown up, so he was not seized by the mental death system, but they were seized by the mental death system or the child welfare system and thrown into foster care. And it's always a painful, excruciatingly painful experience when they lose the relationship and when they have to worry about the son. So that was probably the greatest loss. And you mentioned, or Joe mentioned, the loss of an animal, was a pet. That was another loss, because the pet apparently was taking care of someone who didn't have the financial resources, which Linda had, to take it to the vet. So the pet died unnecessarily, her cat.
Oh.
She lost her apartment in Far Rockaway, and along with the apartment, she lost her ability to go and surf, which had become her life for a year as a surfer. This was after she finished the book, and she had
Wow,
a circle of friends.
surfing. That's pretty nice. That's a big loss.
Yeah, along with the circle of friends she had made, and so I was trying to say, so she had become isolated, and I was trying to argue to the court an argument that seemed to go completely over the head of the judge, who believes the psychiatric narrative, which was she was stricken by schizoaffective disorder 5 years ago that has nothing to do with any of these losses that took place in her life, as well as being incarcerated. She even went to these places on her own volition on occasion, but then she lost control of the process and couldn't leave when she wanted to leave.
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, and
I mean, that's going to make anybody reluctant to seek help. I mean, today, like, I'm hearing more and more people say, don't call the police. And now it's, don't go to a doctor or don't go to therapy,
Yeah, right. The helping professions are hindering. Well, hindering is kind of a weak word, hindering professions.
Yeah.
So their opinion was that, stated on the petition to keep Linda, this has been 5 years she's been going in and out of psychiatric hospitals, and she's been there for first it was 8 months, and now they've extended it 3 months. And she is what they would call delusional, but she's suffering greatly from isolation. She's completely isolated.
Why are they isolating her?
Well, she's not in. She's isolated at the psychiatric hospital in Ward's Island, where none of the people who were in her social network are even aware where she is. Part of it is she hasn't told them, but if she were at home, she would be able to reconstitute a social network, since she had a lot of friends. She feels isolated at Manhattan State because she says all the other people are African American. They don't talk to her. They have another culture. And she says most of them, the other people there, are on psychiatric drugs, and they're not very expressive. When you're on, maybe sit in front of the TV.
Yeah.
When you're on those amounts of so-called antipsychotic, it makes you, studies have shown, it makes you less likely to seek out the company of others and to socialize. So it doesn't. So nevertheless, there's some degree of congregation of the others, but she doesn't feel a part of it. So she's all by herself every day there, morning, noon, and night. And she says she's unable to concentrate on reading, and the TV, or people there, I guess, just watch black African American sitcoms or something. So she just sits there doing her time, and they wouldn't let her out because they said she's treatment resistant. She wouldn't take the drugs, and now they keep extending her stay because the psychiatrist said she needed to be there longer. And Joe can tell you what he testified. I told you now what I testified, that she's suffering from social isolation and loss, and she hasn't had a opportunity to grieve the loss, which she could do in either a support group, although I don't know of any, or with a therapist, not a drug pushing therapist. I looked for clinics because there's one or two clinics where they don't force you to take drugs, but they're going to force her probably to take drugs. Which she doesn't want to do, and have had no positive effect on her whatsoever. They have not, despite what the mental death system says in the form of the psychiatrist. They haven't done anything to diminish the strength of her depression, her sadness, her sorrow, her deep
Right.
grief.
I was going to ask you, what other treatment are they giving her besides trying to put her on drugs?
So they say in the petition to the court, the head psychiatrist says there is no other treatment.
Right. Well,
My argument was the treatment is the social intercourse and involvement with people, and that's where Joe is willing to come in and call her every day, and she says that's helped her to some extent.
of course there's treatment. I mean, nature is always the treatment, giving things to, do they ever ask her what she would like or what she would want to do or what she needs? Like,
No, the dogma of the psychiatric establishment, the party line is the only treatment for depression or psychosis is so-called medication, psychiatric drugs that cause eventually brain damage. We know this now that the antipsychotic drugs cause a shrinking of the frontal lobes. It's often attributed to quote-unquote schizophrenia itself, but most, if not all of it, has been shown to be due to the psychiatric drugs themselves, cause a shrinking of the temporal lobe.
Yeah.
So, as Peter Bregan has always said, that the mental health system's treatment for various, particularly if you get put in a mental hospital, is brain-damaging drugs.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, it sounds, it's completely profit motivated like everything else in this country. So there is no real treatment. I mean, they're not really trying to treat people at all. I mean, they don't want people to get well, because if people were well, they wouldn't be able to make money.
Right. They're certainly charging her a lot. I mean, she also lost, by the way, I should say, her freedom, not only being confined in the hospital, she was, at some point in this process, she was declared incompetent and had a guardian appointed. And so now she doesn't have control over her money. I tried to call the guardian, and the guardian doesn't call me back. She had accumulated savings. She has another apartment that she had been renting, but now is unrented, and she could return there. So if the judge, because she didn't answer all the questions correctly, sentenced her to 3 more months in the state mental hospital. Their idea is the judge really they tend to defer to the hospital psychiatrist, and obviously they believe, the judges tend to believe that they work in these hospitals all the time. This is where they come. They also believe that patients are psychotic, and that the only quote-unquote treatment for it is antipsychotics, which in fact, in the long term, prevent a person from recovering. So the treatment should be her becoming socially engaged again, her mourning the numerous losses. I tried to make contact with the son to see if he reconstruct a relationship with his mother, but he doesn't answer my phone calls, so she's going to have to come to terms with that, at least in the short run. So her reaction to all this has been to kind of retreat into a fantasy world, and but it's kind of a nightmarish world where she talks about death a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now Joe could talk about the day-to-day things and her the fact that just his interactions with her have been
Who's David Day?
therapeutic. Yeah, the therapeutic effect, although she's still under the, you know, destructive effect of the drugs. Yeah, I'll let him talk a little about the day-to-day, what Linda experiences day-to-day, her depression, and her beginning at least to feel some hopefulness with being socially engaged instead of socially isolated. But the judge was not influenced by my argument that her situation of loneliness and isolation was much worse in the hospital where she has no opportunity to reach out to her friends.
I mean, it's pretty like ridiculous that a hospital is isolating people rather than having some kind of stimulation. I mean, something to engage people. I mean, they don't have like any I don't know, classes or music or.
No, they have some kind of groups. Joe may know more about it than I do. What takes place in the groups, because he's talked to Linda about that.
Before we go to Joe, let me just ask you this one question that I've been kind of wanting to ask, since you mentioned that she wrote this book, Doctors of Deception, and it got like all these good reviews by professionals, right?
Yeah, it wasn't reviewed in the New York Times, and it wasn't reviewed in many. I don't think they may have been reviewed in one or two mainstream psychiatric journals, because I know it got a few reviews in journals, academic journals. Yes.
So why can't professionals who read her book and think that it is credible help in getting her released?
I don't know. No one has really. The only person that's taken Wayne Ramsey is a friend of hers, who's a lawyer. He was the one that contacted me to be a witness. She couldn't get a psychiatrist. Would have been better if she had another psychiatrist as a witness, because they're the top of the hierarchy in the mental health system. Blah blah blah. But none of them were willing to testify for her, as far as I know. I don't know if anyone spoke to Peter Stastny. She had a friend who was a dissident psychiatrist. But there was one other thing I was going to say that I can't remember. But go on.
All right. So let Joe talk a little bit about. So what happens now?
What I remember when I was first aware of this is that she had a hearing maybe a month ago, and I don't know if everybody else was, but I was definitely under the impression that all she had to do at that hearing at that time was to admit that she would take medication, with the drugs that they call it, and she would be released. And after I found out all this stuff that was happening, this was not going to be a release. This was going to be another hearing after that, which was last Thursday. And when I spoke to another lawyer that I know of, he also didn't understand, too, why did they have a hearing last month for her to take psychiatric medication under that agreement and maybe let her go, and now they're going to have a hearing if she needs to stay or not. And that was the confusing part. There was a hearing in place to make a decision. If she makes that agreement, that she would probably be released. But they didn't even consider that when we went to the hearing. I never heard them say, you did take the medication, you did agree to that. And
that's what the lawyer
that wasn't happening.
The lawyer told me on the previous occasion if she takes the medication, they'll probably release her in 3 weeks. Well, that didn't take place, as Joe said.
So she took the medication and they did not release her.
Right, so I think that's forced, that's information that's not legal. They forced her to do that and made her make an agreement. and everybody followed that, and then they had something else in mind.
Well, they do that in the justice system too. They get the the detainee to say that, to admit that they did it. They say, well, if you admit you did it, we'll let you go home, like they did to the Central Park Five.
Yeah.
And then, like 12 years later, they're letting, they found the real guy, or the real guy came forward. And so this kind of sounds like, right, like it's like psychiatric plea bargaining.
Yeah.
Well, I myself had a similar problem. I guess Seth could let you know what happened. When I was a young baby at the age of 17 months, I developed a spinal influenza meningitis. And the doctors actually gave me 3 hours to live. And I pulled out, and I became blind and paralyzed on one side of my body. And it was only temporary. And some of it came back. I am legally blind, but it never developed to the sense where it was normal enough for them to classify me as normal. I was really legally blind at the age of 17 months, and they never diagnosed me legally blind. They did that in 1990. So from 1960 to 1990, I was cubbyholed into some space here. I was also in the misfit kids, the classroom with the 2 rooms down the hall for the kids that were behaving erratically. I didn't get Braille. I didn't get any of the things that I needed, and I was left behind. And then as my development stages, I had met some people. I fell in love when I was a teenager, and the woman did not understand what's the difference between blindness and maybe psychiatric or different. And I spent many years trying to explain that. And it's been very difficult. Now, I can't get rid of the label. I am now legally blind since 1990, but they can't reverse that. I also, I suffer a great deal from that. These are social skills, and nobody goes around explaining themselves and says, I'm legally blind, and this is how I see, and they want to know, well, can you see me? And then you have to identify what is that like. It's not very good to present to somebody when you're out and you're trying to meet people. Nobody goes around explaining themselves. And this has been a life journey for me to keep doing this and trying to get out.
And people don't.
Now,
People don't.
Once I found Seth and the organization, I've been an activist trying to do this and helping other people who might be worse off than me. And maybe by doing that, they see that there is something here, and maybe I can teach them to do the same thing I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate, like that we just don't live in a helping society. I mean, it's just profit.
I think what happens is people need to be shown, and people with like 5 senses. I have 4 senses. I rely on my other 4 senses. Most people have 5 senses, and most of their information, 80% of it, comes from the visual point. They don't understand that until it either actually happens to them.
Some people have no sense.
Yeah, exactly. Until it happens to them, then they see it. Like when I was in love, I almost died for that girl, and then she decided I'm not the guy because I have some challenges that she cannot see. This was still back in the days of the 70s where if I hang out with you, what will my friends think? And this was still going on. We didn't have computers then. We had communication.
Yeah.
And that was really good for me at the time. I was right there in the right moment. And then the girl found somebody else, and she got married, and the guy died. He ended up killing himself.
Oh, wow.
And so this is a bad thing on her. I feel like she's actually got a worse life or worse situation than I do. and she wants to, rule me out as something as abnormal, and she can't see that, I was right-handed as a child. My right side was paralyzed. I became left-handed. Uh, I had to play the guitar left-handed. I now changed to play guitar. I'm right-handed now. So I did a lot of things. I've overcome some things. I don't have great sight, but I manage, and it's still not good enough to the average person. I don't know what they expect
Not good
the
enough.
Well,
people to do. It's just they don't have it in themselves.
The outrage is the incompetence of the psychiatrists who examined him and the school system who didn't know that he was blind and for years had him classified as a mentally disabled person.
And retarded, right? Didn't they say that? They said it was retardation. When they had the
treated him as
meningitis,
retarded
it
and
was
put him in
a
a
cerebral
class for
palsy
slow
or
learners or
severely
One at
retarded.
retarded.
one at a time. Listening to you both. Like that's what I'm saying. It's like, who's the retarded one? It sounds like the people calling you retarded, Joe, are the ones that are retarded.
Well, what I think the real reason is, it was a money factor here. When they didn't help
What
me,
else?
the reason why they didn't help me is because it's going to cost the government money. They're going to take somebody like me, maybe like what they showed as Helen Keller, and have to invest a lot of money to get the person functionable. And they saved a lot of money from 1960 to 1990. And the same thing with Linda is, when you're on disability or Social Security or something, whatever your income is a set amount. Like, let's say you get $600 a month. Once you get put in an institution, that thing is definitely like $1,400 a month, and they'll get 13, and you'll get $100 for the month, and it all goes back to the hospital and all the treatment. And the treatment is what? There's no physical activity. There's no, ping pong. There's no mind games. Educate to strengthen your mind. Nobody communicates in the ward. Everybody just watches TV, answers phones. They hang up the phones, the pay phones. Their schedules is who has dinner at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's
Now,
their dinner schedule at the hospital.
Can both of you?
Correct something. The hospitals make more than $13,000 to $14,000 a month. That's what they would make if she was in a group home or something. They probably make more like $1,300 or $1,400 a day. It's considered hospital care.
Right.
They're charging a fortune to Medicare. I don't know the exact amount, but it's certainly much closer to 1,000. Over 1,000 a day. They get
So
every time
that's what it really is, though. It's not about what it was saying. Is it's not really about treatment. If they were doing treatment, they would be giving her some physical therapy. They would giving her things to do. But it's not about that. It's about making money and leaving people like vegetables in a room watching TV and eating all day.
Can either of you talk about her book, Doctors of Deception?
Yeah,
Well, you got the stuff.
Yeah, it's the first part of the book she describes, which is actually pretty relevant. In the book, she talks about not only about electroshock, but about how it's been sold and marketed in a dishonest manner over the past 30 years. And, the same way they've done with the new so-called atypical neuroleptics, that they're new and improved and different than the other ones. But what relevant is that in the 1985 or something, she describes her own, she can't remember her, whatever happened to her, but she was depressed and had probably something somewhat similar, but she lost the memory of 5 years of her life. And this happened in 85 when she was given electroshock. And I met her, I think, at first in 1989. She just had previously had an IQ test, and her IQ went down from 155 to 115, demonstrating indicating that there was some assault on the brain or brain damage. and she. I can read you a bit of what she says here about that, because it's interesting. She says all that then, and now she's become a victim of it again. Those of us who've had electroshock are among the bravest people in the world. The most everyday, ordinary act, just getting up and getting through each day as if it mattered, or a bold act of faith. For how do we know that today won't be taken away too? We don't. We know that our days can disappear like footsteps in wet sand, as if they were never lived. We know that our psychiatric facility, which includes ECT, means that our days, months, and years are considered disposable and are likely to be disposed of again should we have another encounter with psychiatry. We never take for granted that what we know today we'll remember tomorrow. By the way, I want to say that I was told by her lawyer, even the lawyer in the hospital, that 3 years ago when she didn't respond to the so-called treatment, the drugs, her psychiatrist said, let's give her electroshock. So she might have become a victim of electroshock a second time, but somebody said, I don't think that's a good idea. But in the narrative that they constructed for the court, the petition says nothing about Linda's books, nothing about her accomplishments.
Right.
It says she has a long history of psychiatric institutionalizations, as if she was a chronic mental patient who spent the last 30 years of her life going in and out of mental hospitals, whereas in actuality, she spent the last 25 years, up until 2010, as a leader, one of the leading forces in the movement against forced brain-damaging treatments in the mental death system today.
But see, I mean,
you could tell by what I just read that she was obviously a very a gifted writer.
you said the doctor said she's not responding to the drug treatment, but I mean, actually, she is responding to the drug treatment. It's making her a zombie like it's supposed to. I mean, so it's like they act like it's supposed to make her better, which it's not, and then say that she's not responding to the drug treatment when she in reality actually is, and then they use it as an excuse to advance their treatments or keep her in there longer. I mean, it's clearly backwards.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I mean,
what it does, she's not as antagonistic to the staff, because when you're on that amount of, psychiatric drugs, obviously she resents having no control over her life. And when you're on that amount of psychiatric drugs, you feel, well, some people say describe a kinesthesia, there's a medical term for it. Basically an overall feeling of indifference. In fact, she told me that she feels nothing anymore.
So
she doesn't feel the loss of her son. She doesn't feel the loss of her animal, to whom she was her cat. She had a cat to whom she was very close. Because these drugs cut off the feeling.
Right.
So become less antagonistic to the staff, which they probably interpret as some kind of improvement. But they were still asking the judge, and we won a partial victory, even though she's forced to spend another 3 months there. The psychiatrist wanted her to spend the judge to commit her to another year there, which is really a crime against humanity. This is not treatment, it's torture and social isolation.
Well, this is what I'm saying. It's, literally every single interview that I do has the exact same pattern and theme to it. I mean, whether I'm talking to somebody who's talking about the wars, interviewing somebody that's talking about, the weapons industries, ISIS, it's always the same. over and over and over again. The help and the thing that's supposed to be helping is making everything worse, and that's what it's supposed to be doing. So again, you said she's not, the doctor said she's not responding to the drugs. So, but like she, again, she is responding to the drugs, but taking her off of them is never an option. It's like they keep doing more of what doesn't work, even though they're...
They actually gave her more neuroleptics, and now they're saying she's responding because she's not as antagonistic. She might not be as antagonistic because the drugs have turned her into a zombie.
So that's what I mean.
Also because Joe's been talking to her every day, so she doesn't feel as angry, as hopeless. When I first met her there, not having seen her in many years, she said she was dying. So this became a kind of metaphor, although she claims, which may be true, they treat everything she says as delusions, but she gave a very, to me, cogent account of how she was treated investigated at Mount Sinai for uterine cancer, and they told her she needed to have a biopsy. Well, no one has followed up on this. She's been there a year without anyone... apparently they claim that they did follow up on this. I don't know. I mean, you can't trust what the psychiatrists say because they treat everything that the patient says as delusions. She has had, she makes some statements that are delusional, if you want to use that term, but this may not be, but she's not being... no one's called the hospital and made sure that if she had need to have a biopsy, that a biopsy was done. So this is 8 months later. Also, she can't. I think she's still there without her glasses, and they never made any effort to remedy that.
So we only have a couple of minutes left. So I'm just going to ask yourself and then Joe to kind of make like a closing statement, or is there anything anybody can do to help? I mean, are you calling on all real doctors out there to possibly get involved and help get like a real diagnosis for this, real treatment for Linda Andre, who wrote Doctors of Deception, and help her to get released out of Kirby? What is it? Kirby Medical Facility?
There are 3 buildings in the state psychiatric. Kirby is for criminals. She committed no criminal act.
Okay, so well, Joe told me the name of the place was called Kirby.
It's Colby.
Okay, and it's at 125th Street.
No, it's Dunlap. I'm sorry. It's Kirby is one, Dunlap is another, and Myers the third. She's in Dunlap. Okay,
Dunlap. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to help Linda?
Oh, okay. Yeah, they could call me at maybe Noah would be interested at 646-707-3693.
Joe, is there any last words that you would like to share?
Well, when we try to get help, there's not too many people who want to go against the system. So, like, our hands are tied. They know there is help out there. There are a few psychiatrists who know the game, but we're really outnumbered. And nobody wants to change anything because everybody's lives are at stake. Their jobs, or
they're fake
whatever.
Jobs.
Huh?
They're fake jobs.
Yeah, they're safe job, and they're very good. They're the people who do help us. I do appreciate that. They give us great advice, but they're not really the ones to go and help them. Like, people could call me 24 hours a day. I go to court. I'll help people get on the right track. I said in the court that I will take her and help her get out of meetings, to go to her appointments and stuff if they would help to release her.
Yeah.
And me as a legally blind adult, with my cane, I can still take her to and from places, and they still wouldn't really let her go. And now it's just a waiting game now. And, I don't know what to do because the girl is in there suffering. She probably wants to call somebody. The neuroleptic drugs are just making her negative. They're down. She's not thinking. She's just biding time, sitting there watching TV, eating. She's not sleeping well.
Can people visit her? If anybody wants to go visit her,
there's people that can go visit her. That would actually help more because they would see that she has more friends and people, and maybe they wouldn't drug her so much and see that she is functionable and give her that chance. But they probably think now she's very isolated and by herself, and they don't have anybody, and that's the best people to keep. Like, when people are psychiatric and they're criminals and they have their mind, those are the ones that they let go because they're not workable. But the ones who are compliant, that's the ones that we can drug up, and that's the ones we can experiment on. And by the time she gets out of there, she'll be brain dead.
She would have gotten out this last time had she said, I think it was clear. What was done, what I presented that was news to the judge, despite his tendency to defer to the psychiatric establishment, was that Linda was somebody. Of course, in their eyes, a chronic mental patient, nobody. But that she was somebody because she had written a book, she had all the kind of accomplishments. So he spoke to her with more respect. And I was able to get this out the second time. The first time I wasn't able to show her book and all. So had she been willing to... Next time, I'm sure she'll say what they wanted to say, which is, yes, Your Honor, I know I have a mental illness. I know I need to take the treatment. I believe if she says that, they'll let her go. We'll see. But she's been sentenced to another 3 months, but she didn't say that. But if she said, yes, Your Honor, she did agree to the treatment, but she didn't go so far as to say, yes, I know. Those are the magic words. Yes, I know I have a mental illness. Yes, I will get treatment for my mental illness, etc.
Heaven forbid the judges and the psychiatrists ever admit that they're the ones that have a mental illness. That heaven forbid they should ever admit that they're in it for the money and not for helping people.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know which American Indian chief said, the love of money is a disease with them.
Okay, so we're pretty much out of time. Did you want to give a phone number out?
Yeah, I wanted to give Linda's phone number.
Okay.
646-672-6757. And
say it again.
5 and 6 is I think the best time to reach her because the phone is off the hook most of the time. And they put it on it between 5 and 6, and maybe sometime in the morning. Joe knows. I don't know when you can count on it, but 5 and 6 is a good time. 646-672-6757.
And they could also call you to get that number.
Right.
They can also call me. I'm available. I have a phone. It's 212-631-1118. Again, that's 212-631-1118. Just tell me what the situation is. If you're in trouble, you need some help, or you want to talk, just leave a phone number. And if you have somebody in a similar situation like this, there are people out here who can help you.
Okay, thank you so much to the both of you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.